Hello, just Jamie here. Thanks for checking out this new tutorial. I'm looking at the Game Boy Advance today, but before I start, just check out the Facebook page I just opened up so you will never miss a video ever again, and also feel free to share. Also on Patreon, so any further questions can be answered through that. So let's get on with this. So Game Boy Advance, and it was released, as you can see on screen, around 2000-2001. It was the first mainstream 32-bit portable console, or portable handheld, later on preceded almost by the Sony PSP around 2004-2005. So the Game Boy Advance itself had a few really good games, but there was also a lot of games on there I didn't personally like, but I knew it was very popular. So popular so that Nintendo went on to succeed this with the Game Boy Advance SP, which was a flip type portable system. Had different advantages. The screen on the original Game Boy Advance wasn't too good. A slight little bit of sun on it, a bit of darkness, your screen would go. The SP rectified this by making the screen a lot better. So let's take a look at this. So as usual, I've delved into finding the greatest emulator to do this on Windows, and the emulator I'm going to be using is Visual Boy Advance. And just before I start this, let me just remind you that the Super Nintendo SNES emulator video I did the other day, weirdly enough, it's had 2 updates since. So if you follow that tutorial in my playlist, I'll put the new link to the description in there. So let's get on with this Visual Boy Advance. So if we just go to the link in the description, just go to download, and it will bring you to another screen. Like I say, the tutorial is for Windows. I'm going to just go to download, and the current version is 2.1.5 as recording this video. It's also going to support Windows XP if anyone's still using it, or 7, Vista 8, 10 and 11. So I'm going to download the 64-bit version. I'm running a 64-bit processor. If you're not sure which processor you're using, just go to your search and type in system information. You'll find out if you've got a 64-bit or a 32-bit. So in my case, 64-bit, download, and you will get a compressed zip file. I'm going to just drag this onto my desktop, close this browser down, no longer want that, and I'm going to create myself a new folder here, and I'm going to just simply call it Game Boy Advance. And I'm going to drag this compressed zipped file into my newly created folder, double left click on it, and I use WinRAR. You might use WinZip or 7-zip or any other extraction program, they all pretty much work the same. In my case, WinRAR, and I'm going to go to extract here. So we've only got one file inside of this, which is the application. So first of all, I'm going to delete this compressed zip file, don't need that anymore. The reason I created a new folder for this is that if we open this, so this is your main interface. So yeah, it's just another standalone interface, there isn't much fancy to it, but let's attempt to load a game. So to do this, we go to File. Now, the good thing about Visual Boy Advance is that not only does it run Game Boy Advance games, but as you can see, GB, which means Game Boy, original OG Game Boy, also Game Boy Color. In this tutorial, I'm looking at Game Boy Advance right now, so I'm going to just go to Open. And on my desktop, I've got Sonic Advance, so I'm going to double left click on Sonic Advance. And if you've seen that, it says it detected a controller. And of course, as always, I have got my PS3 controller. I love this thing. So there's no configuring with Visual Boy Advance, it just plugs and play. And there we have it. So yeah, it looks a little bit stretched. So let me show you what you can actually do with this visually. So if we go to options, and we of course go to video, we can do a lot here. We can go to resizing the scale. So let's try 4 times. So of course, the smaller you make this, the better it's going to look. After all, portable wasn't meant to be stretched. You'll have your exceptions with exceptional emulators, such as the PPSSPP, which really enhances things. Some other emulators, like this one, doesn't work so well, but that's not to say you can't clean it up. So if we go back to video, you've got other options here. Already defaulted is bilinear filter. If we get rid of this, it will give you a more pixelated look, and it looks a bit more vibrant too. If we go back to video, and if we go to configure, you've got filters here to mess around with. Display filter is currently set to Super 2x SAL, but we got other filters here to mess with. So if I just put none and OK, as you can see, that's gave it more of an original pixelated look. If we go back to options, video, and configure, let's try another one. So we got display filter. I'm going to go to so there you go. So there's a whole host of filters you can mess with. If we go back to options and video again and configure, we've also got interframe blending. So I can put motion blur on this too, as well as a bilinear plus. So it's gave it a slight blur. So that's entirely up to you to mess around with it, to set it to how you want it to look. So let's play a bit of this. You're also going to find that the sound quality on the Visual Boy Advance can sound a little bit distorted. I've tried my best to configure things to make things sound a bit better, but unfortunately it's one of those things. So maybe that was something which the developers of the GBA intended to do to make it sound a bit more true to the original thing. Okay, so by default, if games on the Game Boy Advance had saving and it was saved to the cartridge, you can automatically save your games when it states so in the gameplay. If you want to save your states when you can't be bothered to get to a save point, all you need to do is just go to File and Save State, and I'm going to just select Save State 1. If I just left click on that, and as usual, what I'm going to do, I'm going to play a little bit further into the game, and I'm going to go back to load to see if it's loaded up. So let's do that now. So File, I'm going to go to Load State, and just here under number 1, we will see the time and the date, which corresponds with my laptop. So press left, and there we go, we're back to that save place. Okay, so in some cases you will need a BIOS file to play this. It's a very simple case of just opening up the Visual Boy Advance. And if we go to options, and if we go to Game Boy Advance and then configure, if you select boot ROM here, and then you just find where your BIOS is located, and your games will load just fine. If you don't put a BIOS file in, your Game Boy Advance games won't boot. Your Game Boy and Game Boy Color will though. Let's actually look at playing a Game Boy game, an OG Game Boy on this. So if we go to File and open GB, I have got Batman the video game in zipped folder, which worked fine, just like Game Boy Advance. I just double left click, and we have Batman Game Boy on your Windows PC. And again, no need to configure. Something else is to make the screen look a little bit better. In some cases they can look very bad like this does. If we just go back to options, if we go to video, and if we go to retain aspect ratio, that gives us a bit more of a smaller ratio, and it looks a bit more bearable, especially in really older games like this. So other filters, like I was showing you just a minute ago for the Game Boy Advance, will also work on the OG Game Boy. So if we just go to video, or even Game Boy, we got different things we can play with. So LCD filter is on default, and if we uncheck that, you'll get a bit more of a brighter screen. So I think that's about it. So thanks for watching, and as always, this video is going to be in my playlist for unbelievably simple tutorials. I've got loads at this point, and my aim is to cover every emulator ever made to man. And be sure also to follow me on Facebook so you don't miss a video ever again. And there's also Patreon. So until next time, see you later.